Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown School Board. I call this meeting to order at 7:01. If you could all stand and say the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So correspondence. Brian?
Just a couple things. So in the correspondence folder, we were asked to contribute a letter for a project that the Goffstown Rail Trail is pursuing for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant. So we were happy to comply with that request.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Good news accommodations. Brady, you want to start?
All right. I think the only thing of importance I have to mention today is that this past Tuesday, the student council here hosted the NHASC's Winter District meeting. So we had schools from the Central District. We had 5 different schools come over to here in Goffstown, right here in the library, where we did just some workshops about leadership and being able to represent the people that you're supposed to be representing, and trusting yourself and trusting them. And it was just a good way for some of these different councils to meet and discuss what they're doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Brady. Ms. Bean?
Chris, I have lovely stuff to share with you tonight. Cherise Salter, who's one of our school nurses, shared that on Monday, December 9th, Goffstown High School Health Office was the recipient of generous donations from Ben Tilton, a student at St. Anselm College. Ben, along with his friends, collected toiletries and other essential items to make available for our students. In spirit of the holidays and giving, Care Outreach will be meeting before school on December 18th to decorate gingerbread cookies and distribute them to all of the Goffstown High School students. During that time, they will also be writing angel cards to recent spouses who have lost loved ones in hospice care. And for a second year in a row, Senior Maddox Turk is putting together the holiday baskets of stockings for families at the Farnham Center who have loved ones in getting rehabilitation for drugs and alcohol. On Wednesday, December 18th, John Webb and Cherise Salter will be on a podcast discussing how to best empower and encourage teens around helping the issues with mental health and substance abuse and other abuse issues. This is part of a podcast series done by Making It Happen Coalition, which is a Manchester region hub of grants and workshops for helping teens in prevention. Stay tuned for links if you'd like to listen. Nathan Levanway, one of our teachers here that's in charge of our internship program, gave us a pretty extensive update. 20 seniors enrolled in the course this semester. They were placed across 6 towns. He is actively working with the GHS administration to establish a school year relationship with healthcare sites such as the Elliott and various building trades businesses to meet student demand. He added topics to the existing curriculum, including organizational behavior, negotiation, and project management. He's mentoring a student who's in the process of creating an internship web page. This quarter, they had a pretty neat guest speaker, Caitlin Marie. She came to speak with them about her experiences. She is currently working as a digital content creator. She attended Ithaca College and obtained her Bachelor of Science in television and radio. From there, she worked on shows such as America's Got Talent, The Masked Singer, and the Beverly Hills Dog Show. And since then, she's moved into independent content creation, making content for YouTube and for Patreon about music and horror films. And she's also a variety gaming streamer on Twitch. So she brought some varied things that she's done to those students. 10 new internship locations were secured this school year. So we now have 36 locations. These locations, the new locations include Basque Imaging in Bedford, Proficient Auto in Goffstown, the City of Manchester, the Manchester Airport, Remax Synergy Realty in Bedford, Concord Aviation in Concord, the Manchester School District, the New Boston School District, SAU 24 in Honecker, and the Dunbarton School District. Other locations that continued for a second year include Coppola Physical Therapy in Goffstown, KRG Motors in Goffstown, Mountain View Middle School, New Boston Dental in New Boston Physical Therapy, also in New Boston, Goffstown High School, Raponi Auto Workshop in Concord Hospital, Southern New Hampshire Health System in Nashua, Meals on Wheels in Manchester, St. Joseph's Hospital in Nashua, Catholic Medical Center in Manchester, LB Dry Needling in Merrimack, AMP Plumbing and Heating in Goffstown, Bedford Fire Department, the Goffstown Fire Department, the Goffstown Police Department, Manchester Mounted Police in Manchester, Unique Ford here in Goffstown, Rabbit's Paw Tattoo in Manchester, Bedford Natural Medicine in Bedford, Team Engineering in Bedford, the New Hampshire Court System in Concord, Brown Graphics in Goffstown, Keller Williams Realty in Bedford, and Uncanunic Gardens in Goffstown. Quite an extensive list for our
Yeah.
kids for
It is.
internship opportunities. Ashley Fournier, one of our art teachers, shared the following. Her graphics art 1 class has been learning the process of sublimation and how to transfer their work from Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop to physical products. They just transferred them to coffee mugs. I sent the picture to Denise, and when you see the minutes, she's going to include a picture of a sample of their mug. Her drawing and painting classes have been working on pastel portraits, and it's been quite a challenge for the students, but students are embracing and growing in their skill sets. And she sent me some of their artwork, and she's also going to include those in your minutes. Marissa O'Shea shared good news from National Honor Society. Student applications have been received and reviewed, and they're going to be inducting 49 new members in January. Melissa Mazzoni shared that with the help of 2 military personnel, Goffstown High School tested 40 students for the ASVAB test last Thursday. Eric Greenland shared that students are preparing to take the ServSafe certification exam. This national exam in hospitality and food handling knowledge comes with a 3-year certification, which is great for our students to obtain for part-time employment and career readiness training. And the Culinary Club has 20 members that meet to enjoy cooking and making peer connections and school connections. Last Friday, during our teacher workshop, we had guest speaker Kim Marshall. He's the author of the Marshall Memo, which we pay a small fee, he said, for us to make available to our teachers. He started out sharing how he picks the article, how he narrows down which articles to summarize each week. And then he broadened into a presentation on differentiation, sharing different ideas on how to differentiate in the classroom. And it was actually very interesting. After school on Tuesday, December 10th, the staff enjoyed a wonderful basketball game versus the unified basketball team alongside their mentors. It was a close battle filled with laughs, and with the staff only losing by 1 point. Their personal record, the mentors demonstrated incredible leadership as they helped the unified athletes. Also to note, there was a fantastic turnout from both parents and the student body. It was a wonderful event, and we look forward to our next end-of-season match in February. And that is the good news from Goffstown High School.
Thank you, Ms. Bean. That was a lot of great news. Busy place. Yes, busy place. All right, Mr. Davis.
All right, so the good news from Mountain View, band and chorus teachers reported that they had a great turnout of parents and community members for the holiday concert last weekend, which kind of coincided with the end of our Scholastic Book Fair. The library gave me their number, so the total sales during the book fair for December were $8,849.05, which gave a profit of Scholastic dollars, which they use with the Scholastic to buy books and services of $4,350. 19 books were donated by parents and community members to teachers, and 20 students and teachers won books during the raffle. I have to kind of note that I think last meeting I had said that the newsletter that I had sent was for all staff. It was actually by sixth graders for sixth graders. I gave out the new edition, which Chelsea Baroncroft, she's a seventh grade science teacher at Mountain View. She's started putting this together with students, and it's kind of for students by students. So the students are the reporters that go out and do the research and do things like movie reviews, book reviews, kind of neat little facts that they think that other students would find interesting, and they put this out for free for all the students, and they kind of hand deliver them to all the homerooms for the students to kind of go through and look. Sixth grade students saw a post at the Goffstown Police Department that they had posted that they were looking for holiday cards for the residents of the local nursing homes. The sixth grade students created 92 cards, which was one for each of the residents that the Goffstown Police Department had listed. The cards consisted of holiday messages and poems that the students had created. This last piece is kind of self-serving. I hate doing this, but anyway. It's hard to talk about yourself. Last year, I had the opportunity to go to the National Agriculture in the Classroom Convention in Salt Lake City, which was a wonderful 4-day convention. I just received word on Wednesday that I have been chosen to speak at this year's convention in Minneapolis. I'll be highlighting the Maple Project that we do here at Goffstown. They've asked me to talk about how we've turned this real-life experience into a kind of hands-on, cross-curricular experience for our students. So I'm kind of looking forward to that opportunity to get to go and present. So that should be good.
That's great.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yes,
Thank you.
congratulations. All right, anyone else, good news, commendations? Go ahead, Ginny.
I was able to attend the Nutcracker that the Dancing Youth and Movement group put on a couple of weeks ago, I guess now. And they did an excellent job. It was a great show. Truly enjoyed it. Was well received by all of the audience.
Nice.
They did a great job.
Thank you, Ginny. Anyone else? Caroline?
So Maple Ave had their holiday pancake breakfast or holiday breakfast on Saturday put on by the PFT. And I just want to say that there are administrators who I believe volunteer their time on that day to be present, which is wonderful. They're there early. They help clean up. They're there, just walking around, greeting people, being there for the students, and the students recognize them. And it's a really friendly environment. Not only do administrators do that, but kitchen staff are also there spending their Saturday. And they're very accommodating to help us prep for breakfast. And then janitorial staff are there as well on a Saturday. So really nice for all the staff to spend their time to make this a really nice event for Maple families.
Nice, awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Is there public comment tonight? Yes, all right, come on up. To state your name and address for the record. Go ahead.
Good evening. Mary Jenkins, 245 Wallace Road in Goffstown. You're all aware that today we had a very sobering reminder that school violence can happen anywhere at any time. Families said goodbye to loved ones this morning who they'll never see again. The incident in Wisconsin and Madison today reminds us how important school safety is. I very much appreciate the work that many people have done to move us further along toward school safety, and just as a member of the public, as someone who has loved ones and friends in the schools, I would just, speak on behalf of the public generally that we would love to hear an update at some point at where things stand. Without a lot of detail, but where things stand with school safety so that we take those steps toward reducing the likelihood of an incident like happened in Madison today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. All right, and I don't see any other public comment. So we're going to close public comment, and tonight is our presentation from Cheryl on our audit. So if you guys want to come up to the microphone. Yeah, another chair for that.
15 minutes of fame.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming out tonight.
And I, first of all, want to say just a fun fact from our office. Your audits were the first ones to go out for the schools. We do about 120 school districts, and these got done. A lot of it, I spent a lot of time here. I spent a couple days, but we came over to do the audit. I happened to be here, so I was reviewing as the audit process was taking place. So we had a little, the group that was here, which I think was somewhat different from the year before, were able to get the audits written up, and we gave them back to Scott and Heather and Doug, and they were able to get the management discussion analysis done. So here we are. So that was a great feat. Plus, it was one of mine, so I was very happy. And I also want to thank the staff, Scott, Doug, Heather, for all the hard work they put in on the audit. Without them, we can't get this done and back to you in a timely manner. So they were great. And I've gotten to know Heather. I haven't known Heather really well in the past. She was more I always worked with Laura, but Heather has been great, Doug, Scott, but I
Even Scott?
appreciate.
Even
Scott, yes.
I actually worked this summer doing that. Usually I didn't.
But I've gotten to know Heather a little bit better, and I must say, I appreciate all her effort. She's been asking me some great questions, so you've got a real gem here. We've spent some time together going over processes and with Doug and with Scott, and over how processes should work, how to even read the report, which impressed me. I remember doing it with Laura as well, but just so she knew where the numbers were coming from. With the audits, we have trial balances that build into a bigger trial balance, which then goes to another trial balance. And Heather asked some really good questions, so I am very confident she'll do very well. So I just wanted to give her that. She did a great job and had great questions, so I was impressed. Thank you. All right, so for the audit, I am pleased to say on pages 1, 2, and 3 of the audit report, you did receive an adverse opinion only because of the single employer plan OPEB has not been reported. So without knowing that number, that liability and the related deferred inflows and outflows, we cannot say that the government-wide financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. However, we can say that your major general fund, grants fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information are fairly stated. The government-wide is a combination of everything, and it takes those individual funds from a modified accrual to an accrual basis. The lack of the reporting of the single employer plan for OPEB is on the accrual basis, and I must say you are not alone. A lot of districts do not want to pay the additional money to get the actuarial study done to obtain that number. So you're not the only one with that type of opinion. But other than that small missing piece, your financials are fairly stated. So that is very good. On page 15 of the report is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. This year, we had 2 major funds and then the other governmental funds in the report. The general fund is always a major fund because that is your main operating fund of the district. And the grants fund also qualified as major. The other governmental funds can be found in detail in the back of the report at Schedules 4 and 5, which are found on pages 48 and 49. The other governmental funds are made up of the food service, private donations, student activities, a capital project fund, and the permanent fund of the district. The general fund had total assets at the end of the year of $5,576,666. There were liabilities of $1.5 million, deferred revenue of $12,750, and total fund balance of $4,036,001. That fund balance can further be broken down, and I apologize for all the flipping. I have never found a better way to do this. Can be found broken down in detail in Note 16 on page 37. So the notes are important because they give you more detail of the individual, a lot of the material numbers in the financial statements. So on that, in Note 16, you'll see that non-spendable fund balance was actually made up of inventory and prepaid items. There was no restricted fund balance in the general fund. The committed fund balance was made up of the expendable trust funds, which I've mentioned before because of GASB 54, we blend the expendable trusts into the general fund. And there was a voted appropriation in March of '24 that is setting aside fund balance for future use to be transferred, I believe, to the trust funds. The assigned fund balance was $1,432,531 and consisted of encumbrances, the retained fund balance at year end, and the student activity funds, which was the district portion of the activities. And finally, the unassigned fund balance, which could be used to reduce the taxes, was $1,980,988. Now, we're going to go back to pages 45, 6, and 7. This is where I find are probably some of the most important pieces of the audit, is how did you do with that unassigned fund balance from beginning to end of year? And to get there, we look at Schedule 1, and that is your schedule of estimated and actual revenues. We are reporting budget to actual, and in the budget to actual analysis, you brought in $1,204,789 more than what you had budgeted. That primarily came in through investment earnings and tuition. You took in a lot more, $898,000 more in tuition than what you had originally determined you would take in. On page 46, this is the schedule of appropriations, expenditures, encumbrances. And I find this is always a helpful schedule, but what it takes, or what it shows you, is what you had in encumbrances at the beginning of the year, because encumbrances are nothing more than budget that was not spent, but it can be brought forward into the current year and then spent on something, as long as it's properly encumbered. And that's one thing we check on when we do the audit. Are encumbrances appropriate and proper? And these were. So at the beginning of the year, you carried forward $415,528 in encumbrances, which got added to the appropriations of $49,273,366. And from that total, those two amounts, we reduce that by the expenditures for the current year and the encumbrances of $96,060 that were carried forward into the current year you are now in, to leave an overall unexpended balance of appropriations of $1,198,663. A lot of that savings was under primarily regular and special education. Page 47 is where we show the beginning unassigned fund balance and where of the $2,606,355, and you ended the year with an unassigned fund balance of $1,980,988. And what that is consisting of primarily is the unassigned fund balance at the beginning of the year. You used all of that either to fund an appropriation or to reduce the taxes. Then, the revenue surplus you had on Schedule 1 and the unexpended balance of appropriations on Schedule 2 gave you an overall budget surplus of roughly $2.4 million. Then we make adjustments for the different levels of fund balance, and we had a decrease in non-spendable fund balance during the year of $27,536. A decrease in one of these fund balances will add back to the unassigned fund balance. An increase in an assigned fund balance will take away from the unassigned. And there was an increase in the assigned fund balance of $200,000 to give you the ending unassigned fund balance of $1,980,988. Anyone can say bingo. I've got a bingo card. All right, now, in the very back of the report are starting on page 52, and then again on page 54, are two additional opinions that we render as part of the audit. Because you receive and expend over $750,000 during this year, we are required to perform a single audit, we call it a single audit, in accordance with uniform guidance. Luckily, coming up in another year, I think it's in 25, 26, that threshold is going to $1 million, but I believe you'll still qualify here for a single audit. But we had to do additional testing on grants to make sure you're in compliance with the federal standards. There are 12 requirements we have to look at and determine what we have to test. We usually have to test 4 to 6 of the 12, and depending on the grants that we test is what requirements we have to test. So I'm pleased to say that the first opinion is on the financial aspect of the grants, and the second opinion, which is on page 54, is on the actual grant program itself. This year, we did do our compliance testing on the special education cluster, which consists of IDEA and preschool, as well as the leftover COVID-19 money. We also tested that. And on page 56, it kind of summarizes our results, not only for the compliance audit, but for the financial statement audit. And it does say that we did not have any material weaknesses, nor did we have any significant deficiencies, and there was no non-compliance with any laws and regulations. That also applies for your federal awards. No significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses. In addition, on this sheet, it notes that you were not considered a low-risk auditee, so we're required to do a testing level of 50%. Low risk can go down as low as a 25% testing threshold. You're not considered low risk only because of the adverse opinion on the financial statements. And as you see at the bottom of the report, there were no findings, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. So again, that's to be commended. And we do a lot of testing on this. Finally, on page 57 and on 58, we give you a schedule of expenditure of federal awards for all the grants that you received money on and how much money you expended on each of those grants, which total $2,150,162. Once this report is completed and it's been issued to the district, there's one final component, I don't think I've mentioned before, but you're required to submit a data collection form to the federal clearinghouse on your audit. So there's one more form that is completed. We assist in that completion, and we sign off on it. And then we submit it to the district. They review it, do their piece, in the business office, and sign off on it. And so the form gets submitted with a readable, searchable copy of this audit report, and it gets submitted to the clearinghouse. And there is a deadline on those. It is March 31st, so you are probably one of the earlier ones, definitely in New Hampshire, that has, everything is buttoned up and completed. So again, I was very happy as well. So on that note, are there any questions?
Any questions? Go ahead,
I just
Scott.
have a couple of statements.
Yeah.
For one, I want to thank Heather. She did a ton of work. Laura helped us to, up until July 1, and then there's a ton of work that had to get done, and Heather spearheaded that, and Doug and I helped, I'll put it to that way. So Heather, I want to thank you publicly for that. I learned a ton. But when you see those last few pages, people often say, well, what do folks at the SAU do? And when the amount of work that goes in to this is incredible. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank people like Sue Ainsworth, who deals with our special ed and all of the compliance and the financials for that. So every time we have a grant that's a position that's grant funded, or we buy something that's grant funded, there is a ton of paperwork that has to go along with that. And Beth in our office as well, like she handles that and Wendy on the other side. And there's just a lot of compliance. So when you get, in the past, Esther, we were getting $2.5 million, but on average, let's say $1.3, $1.5 million of grants, you have a ton of compliance. And people like Beth and Sue and Heather and people in the business office have to make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed to get this type of, not finding, but just results from the financial audit. So I want to thank those people, in particular. And I know I can't do my job without people like Heather and others. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? Go ahead, Dan.
It's also important for us to realize that when Cheryl was saying, I test 50% of stuff, she didn't mention what the stuff is that she's doing. It's the detail. It's the invoices that come in. It's the processes that take place to make sure there's a purchase order, that everything is in line, we're paying the correct amount. There's a lot of detail in things that need to be done in the office. It's just not the overlayer. So it's everyone in the office of our accounting staff who really step up to get this done, that have no adverse opinion.
Right. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that.
If I can just add,
Yeah.
we had an incident, and just to show how important this work is, we had an incident for a single audit. We were asking for information to be provided on how a calculation for payroll was done. We were told, we asked, and they said, well, we had it, but we didn't save the sheets. We just kept overwriting the sheets for each individual employee and didn't save a copy. Because they couldn't reproduce, because the rates were varying, they couldn't reproduce the work that they had to submit for reimbursement. We had to question over $850,000 in expenditures because there was no proof. So this entity may have to pay that money back to the federal government. So it's very important.
To be clear, this wasn't us.
No.
This is some hypothetical other example.
Yes. This actually happened, but not here, because that would be in the report. But that's why it's so important that everybody is diligent with their work, because if we find something amiss, we have to report it, and it could be a question cost, and this entity, not here, will, possibly could have to pay that money back. So it's between them and the federal government. We reported it, it's now with them. But that's why it's very important.
So since it wasn't us, we can cut this clip and send it to the budget committee tomorrow.
Anyone else, questions or comments for Cheryl or Heather? You have anything else?
No, I would just echo Scott's comments.
Yeah.
Well done, as always.
Thank
So
you,
I think
guys.
about where we were about 6 or 7 years ago. We've come a long ways.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
both
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And happy holidays.
Yes, happy
Same to you.
holidays. All right, so we're gonna move on to approve December 2nd meeting minutes. Anybody see anything? So I'll need a motion if everybody's good with them.
Yeah, and just for giggles, it is
Yeah.
the one presented in the packet this evening.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Anybody want to do a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes for December 2nd meeting.
All right, thank you. For a motion from Caroline, is there a second? By Jack. Is there any further discussion? So when I ask for a vote, I'm going to do board members first because Mrs. Moran wants to be able to see what the student and teachers are doing because it got a little confusing last time. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And teachers, are you voting? Yes? And student voting? Any opposed, abstaining, and we're unanimous?
Abstention.
One abstention? Sorry, Jared. One abstention. How was that, Denise? Good? Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, moving on to committee reports. Scott, Dan?
I'm going to make the motion, and Scott can detail it if he would, please.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the total manifest value of this evening of $2,017,853.26.
All right, thank you, Dan. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Caroline? All right, go ahead, Scott.
All right, so you'll note on your manifest summary sheet that a little over $1.4 million was attributed to payroll, taxes, and benefits. That was one pay period. But in that one pay period, we did pay the New Hampshire retirement system for retirement contributions. There was quite a bit of special ed activity, and you'll note that this relates to both special ed contracted services as well as out-of-district services. This particular manifest, we paid over $114,000 to Durham School Services for both in-district and out-of-district transportation. I'm going to, when we talk about the expenditure report, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about special ed transportation. You'll also note that there are some larger providers in terms of the amounts, and that last one, Seven Hills, that is 2 students, but one of those students is a residential student. With respect to general expenses, that subtotal is a little over $258,000. The first one is arbiter pay, and for those of you who don't know, we do use a company that pays these officials via ACH, so we deposit monies into those funds. The athletic director signs off on it. The next day, I sign off on it, and then they get their monies soon thereafter. And it's a lot easier than cutting checks or sending ACHs, so it's worked out really well. BMO Harris Bank, that is the district's credit card, and I believe it was close to $5,000 of that $6,525 was related to replacement uniforms from the athletic department. The A&F committee asked me which uniforms they were. I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that one. We're in that time of year again where we're paying for propane, so we paid Dead River over $25,000 and Eversource for electricity a little over $32,000. Goffstown Truck Center, a little over $105,000 for regular ed transportation. One that you don't often see is Marcia Brenner, and these are IT software services. These are plugins that allow us to do what was it? Trying to remember. It was.
It was Power School, I think.
Power School related, where they do like different registrations and different things in Power School, but it allows us to, those systems to talk to each other. Nalt's Plumbing, there was a hot water heater a commercial one that we replaced here, as well as Mountain View Middle School repairs. I mentioned to A&F, and I wanted to share it with the board, that 2 to 3 years ago, we replaced a commercial hot water heater here for like $3,000, materials and labor included. And this one was like closer to like $4,800. So we had gotten multiple bids too. So the cost of things over like 2-3 years have gone up, quite a bit. So I think we all recognize that there's inflation out there, but this one for me was crystal clear because we had just done another hot water heater a couple of years ago, and I asked Randy and Dawn, is this right? And they're like, yes, it is right, and they showed me the quote. So lastly, last two, northeast door, we did some door replacements here at the high school, as well as some door repairs. For those on the board and for those in the community, to replace one double door set now is like $10,000 a door. So those things also are not inexpensive. And lastly, College Board, we want to thank Brady for taking these tests at some point in your life. But we do student testing here at Goffstown High School. I think this was the PSAT, and I think so. Brady, you're nodding, right? I'm right on that one? Good. Because SAT is usually in the...
Yeah, that's later in the year.
Later on in the year, okay. And then lastly, Performance Food Service, food and commodities, a little over $20,000.
All right, thank you, Scott. Any questions or comments? All right, I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Teachers saying yes, opposed, abstaining? All right, so we're unanimous.
So I was hoping that Cheryl would be here for this, but she's not, but Heather is. So we could say that we did the expenditure report review, because the auditors do like when we talk about this, so that we're informing the board and the community how we're spending money. But if you just go right to the last page, which is page 12, you'll see that all the way to the far left is the budget for the school district, and then all the way to the far right is what percentage of that budget has either been expended or encumbered, and we're almost at 90%. So when Cheryl talks about $1 million here, $2 million there, that has to be in the context of almost $53 million. So I know that I strive to be within 2.5% of our budget. And I say that because I know $1 million is a lot of money, but when you're talking about a $52 million budget, it's not as much as you would think in terms of a buffer, shall we say. When you, what you'll see in the expenditure report that I mentioned before, on the special ed transportation side, I've had conversations with Jen Freitas and Karen Campbell, who's our transportation coordinator, and Doug Totten is going to work on this, but we think that our trend line, that we might be short monies for special ed transportation, because we have at least one, if not two, out-of-district placements, which we did not budget for, and those are costing us money. So it is not unusual for an out-of-district placement on transportation to cost $50,000 a student if they're going, alone to a particular facility. So more to follow on that one. I'm not, the budget looks fairly good, so I'm not looking to do any type of budget transfers now, but I do like to alert you when we do see that, and I appreciate that our special ed department, they clued me in like in November, so that if it was a worse situation, we could take corrective action. So I want to praise them for, letting the business office know that we're not trending too great there. The other one is health insurance. So we do have funds that are unspent in health insurance due to unfilled positions and changes in plans. So a lot of times we ask, hey, why do we have money either underexpended or overexpended in health insurance? It's volatile. So at the SAU, for an example, 1 or 2 people decide to go on the plan. That could be challenging for an SAU which has a smaller budget. In this instance, we have people that have switched plans. So they might have had a family plan, now they're down to a 2-family. or we changed staff, and before we had a family, someone who was a staff member who had a family and now they're single. So things do fluctuate, and when premiums are 25,000, that has an impact on your budget. So there's some positive trend lines, one not so positive one, but so far it's tracking pretty well. So I just wanted you to know that. Also, next on your agenda, you'll see that you have your default budget in your packet. And what I'll have you do is, the default budget is basically the current year's budget that we're in right now, and then there's a reduction of any one-time expenditures, and then there are increases and decreases. You'll note that there are decreases from the current budget that are on page 2. You'll see, for an example, that under our athletics and co-curricular, our default is $65,000 less than it was in the current year due to changes in staffing and their elections for benefits, et cetera. And then there are some where there are additions. So on the transportation side, regular ed transportation went up, and we talked about that, Jared and I did, during the budget presentations. When we came off of our former contract, that was 5 years, we had a very favorable rate, and during that period of time, post-COVID, almost every school district had to renegotiate their rates. You saw those rates when I presented them to you, and they all went up. Every single district saw 20 to 25% increases in order to attract and retain bus drivers. So that's one in there. And because we are required to provide K through 8 transportation, that is built in to your default. And what will happen is at your January 6th meeting, I'll have you sign the default budget at that time, and then we'll upload it to the DRA. And this is something that will also be presented at the deliberative session, and then I'll present it also at the public hearing. And that hasn't been scheduled yet, Jared, but when it is, the budget committee presents the budget, and then either Jared or myself would present the default budget.
Or Jack,
Or Jack, right, okay. All right, Jack, here you go. So the next in your packet, and also on the agenda, is a warrant article, which I wanted you to review. And what you'll see is that there are only 3 articles on the draft warrant. And the first one is the election of officers, and it's my understanding that we have 1 position open for 1 year, and then we have 3 positions that are for 3 years. And I hope Denise is giving me a nod, so I think I'm right on that one? I hope so. And then the operating budget, you'll note that I did not put what the operating budget is because the budget committee has not concluded their work. Jared will talk about that in a few minutes, but the default budget number is included. And then lastly is a facilities capital reserve fund deposit of $400,000. And that is to come from the unassigned fund balance as of June 30th of 2025. And there was a request from the budget committee to add no new amount to be raised from taxation. I think we already did that last year, but that was something that they asked the town and the school to do. In your packets, I put a history of the capital reserve fund from its inception. And as I was sharing with the superintendent this afternoon, that we have had 6 successful votes on the capital reserve fund and deposits. That's outstanding, and I think we should be very appreciative of the community for allowing us to use that fund to replace critical infrastructure. So this would be the 7th opportunity for us to do that. What you're going to note is I often get asked, and so does Jack and Jared, like, well, what are you going to spend that $400,000 on? So what the intent is a couple of projects. So you already knew about the Mountain View Cistern project. We anticipate with an allowance for a contingency that'll be about $300,000. We'll get firmer numbers, because I know Randy Loring is working on that as we speak. we are setting aside as a district $50,000 to replace the turf field in 10 to 12 years, or at least have a good chunk of it. And then the last one is an IT firewall, which is a 50% E-rate matching grant. So this is something that I want to, I think we're going to be talking about that under new business, but it is a firewall that does need to be replaced. We're trying to be proactive on it, and we'll discuss that under new business. So, so with that, in terms of decisions for the warrant, that does not need to happen until January 6th, but that is when you have to then make those decisions, because then when we do the public hearings and we go through deliberative session, we need to know what the board wants to do in terms of amounts, if they change an amount, if they change the wording on that. So January 6th would be the date that we'll revisit it, and we have to then approve it, at least to move it forward. And that's all I had.
All right, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I would just inquire, Scott and I would be looking to see what the board's reaction is to the $400,000 number. So we know that we've got to have kind of this we've got to move an amount onto the budget committee in January, but I at least wanted to get a sense of where people find themselves with that number.
Yeah, because that's right, the budget committee would, at some point, they're going to vote whether they recommend it or not recommend it.
Go ahead, Dan.
Just for giggles, something came to mind saying, would it make any sense to have two? One for our capital reserve that we have used for the capital reserve, but we have a specific, very expensive project, $300,000 for the Phase 2. If that was to ask the people if they wanted to fund it, specifically as a yes, no, because otherwise than that, if people look at 400,000 and they say, that's too much, we've got nothing.
The
And it's
challenge-
really
Oh, sorry.
specifically for the cistern that we really need the money for.
Go ahead, Jared.
It just, Dan, I know that we've talked about it. If the voters say no, then our hands tied if there's an emergency response or if there's something that we want to do, if we went down that road. Versus, because we've talked about breaking out multiple items into individual warrant articles. Speaking from experience and talking to other people, I think in March, this past March, there was warrant article fatigue
Yes.
by voters. But I'm of the mindset, I understand what you're saying of, do we want to just pull out this one, or do we want to pull out all of them and have individual warrant articles so that we can do it à la carte? I know that traditionally, we've looked at it just as one big warrant article, and I don't know if we want to change strategies on that right now.
Something to talk about.
Go ahead, Jack.
My question would be, there was talk about, when we toured the turf field, I was on the high school tour, and it was mentioned about having a separate CRF just for the turf field. I don't know if it's a possibility or not, but I know that was the budget committee's questioning of whoever was there that couldn't answer it. And I don't know if that works, or
So
I see it sort of as in the same detriment.
So you can definitely do that. You would have to go through the process of creating the fund. So that, I think that's where we have not done that. So it would be a warrant article to create and establish the fund and then to make a first deposit into it. Scott, your thinking was to just leave it with the general capital reserve fund?
Yeah, I think every advice that I've ever gotten from, whether it be attorneys who represent school districts or folks who have experience, is that having a facilities capital reserve fund that encompasses pretty much a wider scope is easier for a school district to manage, and also gives them greater flexibility in the event of a crisis.
Right.
When you have, if you did create one for the turf field, one of the arguments against that is that if there ever was a crisis and you had to spend money, one could argue that you could use the monies from this fund, knowing that in the following year you had to kind of make up for it. So it kind of limits you. And then it goes to what I think Jared was saying, is that there are some communities that they do. They have a capital reserve fund for every piece of fire apparatus, and you do then have to go through 20 warrant articles in terms of, do you want to, and some
know,
of
I hate that.
our neighboring community, New Boston, has some of that, where they have a lot of capital reserve funds. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but in this particular case, I think that if the school district is diligent in tracking the funds, and the reason why I like this document is that it does a couple of things. It does track the funds, but it also is very transparent. You know, when did we get the monies? What did we do? So, you know, when people see things like we spent money on a boiler replacement, fire panel, tractor replacement, a theater, locker room, flooring, a Mountain View rooftop unit, I mean, it aligns with what they've seen on that CIP matrix.
Yeah, yeah.
So that it's not like we're just pulling projects out of the air. I mean, these are legit, you know, projects that, you know, we have planned for. So, and I think we've been very transparent about that, and this happened, Jared, what, 5 or 6 years ago is when the budget committee kind of said, hey, you gotta start to list out how you're spending your money. We did that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a general question, if for some reason the CRF amount is not approved by the voters or whatever process we go through, what is the appetite of using our so-called contingency fund to do the cistern project during the summer? Do we have an appetite for that?
Well, we certainly can.
Yeah.
So
But
that would be a permissible reason to do
I
it.
guess my question is how critical is this? Because I know some people, at least from the budget committee, they're talking about, let's push off things a year if they aren't critical items.
This has to happen. We spoke to Randy about it this morning, and Randy said, this has to happen this summer because there were, when we did phase one, he said that we would not pass inspections going forward on this cistern. So I asked him that exact same question this morning. He said it has to happen this summer. So when we were talking about, if you put it as a separate warrant article, if it's a separate warrant article and it fails, that means you can't do it till the following year, because even if you had the funding, you still couldn't do it, because no means no. So I think that as long as we're transparent here, like this is what we're using it for, I think that would be the best thing. If it failed, then the board is then gonna have to determine, do you want to roll the dice and see if the thing passes inspection or still complete it? I think we still need to complete this thing ASAP.
Can I
Go ahead.
follow up?
Yeah, go for it.
When was our last inspection? Is this a yearly inspection of it?
I
or-
believe so, yeah. And if you recall, a couple of years ago is when they went in and they kind of like blasted out the inside of it, and then they epoxied stuff. But there's a bigger issue with, I'm trying to remember what word Randy uses, but there's a bigger issue.
Flux capacitor.
It's a language that Randy speaks, but that part needs to get fixed. It's a 30-year-old or plus cistern, so it's seen its end of life.
Who does the
And that's-
inspection? Is it our town fire chief that signs off on it or somebody else?
No, these are other entities. Usually it's the people that inspect our fire suppression systems who do that type of work.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you. Is this also, because this is phase two, is this something that potentially, if it had to get kicked down the road, or if the argument was made, it could be said that the cost could go up because by putting off phase two, we could be bringing about a potential for more damage, or to make the ticket even worse when we do get to it? Or no?
I think it's safe to say nowadays that any project that you defer will probably have a high degree of probability that will have a higher price tag.
Well, yes.
But I think the bigger concern is that because it relates to fire suppression, and if the system does not work, then we cannot use the building unless you have like these fire watches, and it becomes like a lot more complicated. So we often hear from people, hey, be proactive on your maintenance. We're trying to be proactive here. Again, this is a 30-plus-year-old structure that needs to get work done on it. So according to Randy, it has to happen this summer. And we're planning on not using Mountain View this summer for summer school. We're already in those stages of moving programming to the elementary schools and the high school to accommodate Mountain View being offline.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you. Unrelated, not really a follow-up question. Are the repairs that are being done, were those was that part of the reason why there was 2 unscheduled fire alarms at Mountain View?
No.
That they had to bring in no,
No.
that was different
No.
pump station stuff?
No,
Okay.
and just for the record, we did have 2 unplanned fire alarms go off at Mountain View. We do have our local fire department that participates in these fire inspections. There were some things that our fire inspector, our new fire inspector, did not know about the system, and they had to do and they did not know about it, and therefore it triggered the alarm twice. Okay? So that's no fault of anyone, it's just somebody who's brand spanking new to our community, and it happened. So, no, we don't plan on having a fire alarm test in the middle of the winter.
Back to back.
Back to back.
Nonetheless, Mr. Groves.
No, as we do, I do see and read that, oh my God, I can't believe that we were awful in doing that. It was an accident.
I didn't know if it was related to,
Yeah.
The response was great. My sons really enjoyed their emergency blankets, so.
Yeah.
We heard a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yes, like, look at these silver things. So they were taken good care of. I didn't know if it was related. Thank you.
You're
What
welcome, Lauren.
happens when your longtime fire inspector guy passes?
All right, so moving forward, the consensus for the 400,000, do you have another,
No,
did you have a hand up?
Yeah, I did have my hand
Yeah,
up.
go ahead.
I'm fine with the 400,000
Yeah.
for your consensus kind of item. I did talk with Scott about it. Everybody knows that I think Article number 3 should be raised by taxation. I know I'm not going to persuade people's votes on this. But I would like to add language that says if this article is defeated, this money would be returned to offset taxes. I would like to have that type of language put in there. Because that is exactly what would happen if an unassigned fund balance article is not approved by the voters. That money would go back to offset taxes. And I think it should be in the warrant article. So contingent on that being approved by the lawyers, which I think it will be, because it's in the prior articles, I think we should add that in there. That way everybody sees it.
Go ahead, Scott.
So in my conversation with Jared, as Jared talked to me about this, I would bring it, if the board wanted me to, I would bring it to our attorney to make sure that it was permissible, because anytime you're dealing with a warrant article, our attorneys review it, so that's one. I also wanted the board and the community to know that for the last, what has it been, 2 to 3 years, Brian, in the voter's guide, I put that in the explanation for the article, that should this article be defeated, this money is used to reduce taxes, and then when we talk about it on the TV, the GTV show, do the same thing. So voters should know that if this did not pass $400,000, then goes to offset taxes for the following year. Whether or not that's in the board's decision-making, whether or not you want me to inquire with our attorney or to put it on. So, but I can certainly do whatever the board wishes in that respect.
What's the consensus, Dan? Do you
Yeah,
have a hand up?
I'd like to see the opinion, anyway.
See what
to
they say.
whether- Yeah, what would the attorney say? Because if we're going to add no new amount to be raised from taxation, which is technically true because it's already been raised,
Right.
the alternate of that is it gets returned. So maybe there's a statement, we could not just say, to ask the attorney for that particular statement, but is there a suggested statement that they've seen elsewhere?
Okay.
So is everybody good with that?
That would make it kind of shorter
At
and
least getting some information.
encompass both things. That
Thank you, Dan. Go ahead, Retta.
Can I just ask, did you say we have had that language in the past,
No,
or we
In the
never?
voter's guide.
We have had it in the voter's guide,
Yep.
and we have verbally explained it when we do our warrant article review with Goffstown TV. And I know for the last 2 to 3 years, I've been doing that, based upon feedback from these meetings and from others, to let them know.
And do we have a history of the amount of money we've given back to reduce taxes over the years, kind of like what you did with the capital?
Yeah, it's on your revenue sheet.
Okay.
So you'll see.
Does that show it over multiple
Yeah,
years?
it shows it over 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
So it was very challenging with COVID because the number was a lot higher. But it's pretty much ranged from around 1.7 to $2 million with the exception of those COVID years. But keeping in mind that we're talking about $50 to $55 million budgets too, so.
Right. And I'm just asking that because some people may forget that we do give the money back. For me personally, when you have it in the Warren article, it's like you've got to choose one or the other. Do you want your taxes reduced or, put in the money there? It's like, well, I want my taxes reduced when it's actually in the Warren article. It's not like we're hiding it, but it sounds like you might, that you could choose to have, choose A or B, not A and B.
Right.
And we do give money back regularly to reduce taxes. I think we're very conscious about that. So it's kind of, putting it in a context so they understand that we do give money back to reduce taxes. But right now, we're asking for this money to be put into a specific capital reserve fund. So that's,
And if I may, when we set our budgets, the revenue is part of that, and the amount to be returned to offset taxes is also budgeted. So people should, and the board should know that, as well, because most people, I think, one of the things that I think that this board should be pretty proud of, at least in my tenure, is that monies that have been budgeted that have not been remain unspent go back to reduce taxes. So, and that's very important, because it's not like, there's people going on a spending spree at the end of a school year, and I think we have stayed really true to that, and with that, hopefully we've garnered the trust of the community, knowing that whatever's not spent will go back, to offset taxes in the following year.
right. Thank you.
All right, thanks for, Dan, then Jack, then Ginny. Go ahead, Dan.
So yeah, I can appreciate the logic, Retta, but while I was listening to you, it almost seemed to be an explanation to use money from taxation, because that's plain language. Because if we don't use unassigned fund balance, and we just say, this is just like the town does it sometimes, it's obvious, where this one isn't as obvious. And I kind of like obvious better. It's more transparent.
And if I can just add to that, I think the school board, when presenting, has given a lot of information, and I think the presentation, the explanation is really important, and hopefully they hear that.
Right. Ginny?
I'm just confused because I think if you put that language on the end of it, people are going to vote no for it because a lot of people don't read, the information that we send. And if they don't know exactly what this is for, and it says, if you vote no, the money will go back for tax relief. And people want tax relief. So you're kind of giving them a reason to vote no on this. I would rather the language just stay out because we give money back every year. People know that a lot of dollars go back every year. And if we want this passed, it seems like we already have no new amount to be raised from taxation. I think that's good enough.
Thank you, Ginny. Jack, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if we're gonna put in that, that it would go back to offset taxes, can we say that it will go off to offset 25 cents per $1,000 of valuation, or 12.5 cents, or
Oh,
I
actually,
think we're
it's-
getting, this is just me, I think the first step would
Talk to the
simply be
lawyer.
to talk to our
It's like a
lawyer.
nickel.
Let's see what he says. You could
Per
still
million.
deliberate on this on January 6th as to what you want to do. We'll have to let the budget committee know that we're looking into it, but
Okay.
the amount is what
See
the
what the
amount
lawyer
is.
says. We'll go from there.
But we can kind of go from there.
Okay.
And I'll get more information.
I say just
Okay.
That's what we're gonna do.
All right, and then do we have to approve the default tonight?
No.
We're gonna do that in January also?
You're gonna have to sign off on it in January, so.
So we'll
Right
wait.
now, it says draft.
Right.
I'm gonna hit the button before January 6th, and then it becomes like finalized, and then you sign it,
Okay,
so.
so January 6th, this will come back.
Yeah.
All right, is there anything else
That's
for you,
it.
Scott? You're
There's a couple
good?
of other things, but they're under new
They're,
business.
New business. All right, Budget Committee, Jared, or Jack?
We'll talk about, we have 2 meetings coming up this week, Tuesday and Thursday. We don't have anything scheduled after that at this time. We did review again the school board budget with some very big explanations that were asked by the Budget Committee. What are the roles, responsibilities for our positions? I think the superintendent, when I was there, did a great job. There was, I'm told, robust conversation about some of our administrative I shouldn't say individuals, in his administrative positions, what the roles, responsibilities were, and there was conversation about that. They did make some cuts to our elected positions, so the moderator, treasurer, and other elected positions, they voted to cut, so stipends, from the budget. There was a motion to reconsider the physics field trip. That motion to reconsider did pass, however, the money was not added back in. It's like you vote to reconsider it, and then you vote on whether you add the money back in. Key word is that we still don't have the physics money. The only things that have been cut are the elected stipends, and I think we're in a good position. I've talked with a few of them individually and, some of them collectively. I don't think, just like last year, we didn't get all budget committees approving or voting to recommend our proposed budget. But I think people realize we're less than 3% from this year's budget in our proposed budget versus what the town is doing. I think we're okay. I think that they might bring it up, especially when we talk about the warrant article and the CRF. They probably talk about that a little bit in detail. But from our proposed budget, I think we're pretty solid at this point.
Thank you, Jared.
If there is conversation, that will most likely be on Thursday of this week for the school.
And those are at 6.
That is at 6 o'clock here.
Perfect, thank you. Anyone?
Jack, if you want to add anything.
Jack? Yeah.
I only spoke in public comment. You can see that posted on Facebook if you want to see it. I sounded much better when I listened to myself than I thought it was when I said it.
All right, thank you, Jared, thank you, Jack.
May I just say
Oh,
one thing?
go ahead, Jenny.
I think as far as our administrators go, I wonder if the position's ever been taken that because that we have administrators that know what they're doing and have connections throughout the state, and they're in the positions in our school district that they need to be, that's why our cost per student is so low. Because I think there really is an indication there. Because we have people that know what they're doing and know how to get the best out of every project, every class, how to make things go together like Kim has been doing at the high school. Bringing the classes together to be more effective, bringing teachers from here to there. And I think having administrators who are so knowledgeable is one reason why our cost per student is so low. And I would like the Budget Committee and the community to really know that that's why they're important. And you have to pay people or they're not going to stay.
Thank you, Jenny, appreciate that. Go ahead, Scott.
Just a couple of things. Just the cost per pupil is so low, it's the lowest in the state.
Right.
So I just wanted to just clarify to the board and to the community that Goffstown is the lowest cost per pupil in the state of New Hampshire that has a district that has both an elementary, middle, and high school. So the lowest, so not just low, but like the lowest in the state. During this conversation, the superintendent did a presentation. I don't know if you saw all that, but one of the metrics that is on the State Board of Education, the New Hampshire Education Department's website talks about administrative expenses, and it compares them across different districts, and ours was to 10.4%, I believe.
10.4.
And that is in the middle of the pack in terms of school districts across the state of New Hampshire. And then the other one that I shared with the superintendent today is I looked at our function lines from 20 years ago. The function line 2410 is your administrative type line. And what I did is I looked at the percentage of the overall budget that went towards all of the different functions. And over a 20-year period, it has barely moved off of 6.2%. So it's not like there's this huge disparity kind of going on. It's been fairly consistent. Do I believe that it was fair for budget committee members to talk about? Of course it is. Anytime you're trying to determine is a position still worthwhile or, yes. And I thought that our administrators did a phenomenal job explaining the drastic changes that we have seen over the last 10, 15, 20 years when some folks, or even longer, when some folks were in school. So we operate under much different circumstances, and these folks, as you said, Ginny, are doing an incredible job, and they're allowing teachers to teach. And I think that's the one thing that we have to keep resonating, is that administrators have a ton of compliance, a ton of behavioral issues, et cetera. When they do their jobs, and they do their jobs well, it allows teachers to teach in the classroom and not be disrupted by other things that are now required of them. So that can't go understated.
Yep. Go ahead, Jerry.
Scott's reminded me of two other things I wanted to bring up. I did move our school budget to close all reconsideration items
Yeah.
and move it to public so that we wouldn't talk about it anymore. Everybody except us voted against me. So they want to keep our budget open for whatever items. A second one is a shout out, and I need to make sure that I give this. During the conversation, during public comment, Mary, who's the GEA president, I can't remember Mary's last name.
Grassett.
Yeah, did come and speak on the awesomeness of our administrators too. So I do want to give her a shout out to say thank you for coming to the budget committee and talking about that. So, thank you again, is what I'll say.
Thank you, Jared. All right, moving on to C&E. Ginny?
Our meeting was canceled due to inclement weather, and we will be meeting again January 13th at 7 p.m.
Perfect.
at the SAU.
Great. P&C, where are you? Retta?
I'm right here.
I know you're over there sometimes.
Although there's more room over there.
I
wanna
know.
be over there next time. Although I'd like you. So PNC has not met since the last time. We will meet again on January 6th at 6 p.m. here, here at the library.
All right, awesome. So policy was supposed to meet, we got canceled, we were going to meet tonight, but canceled that. So we are now meeting January 13th at 5:30, and we do have old business later in the agenda for policy. Technology report.
Technology will meet on Wednesday, January 8th at 4 p.m. at the SAU.
Awesome, thank you. And superintendent's report.
Thank you. I want to let the board know that the Youth Risk Behavioral Survey is going to be conducted at Goffstown High School on January 10th. So information has gone out to parents. That's a statewide program that's been going on for about 30 years. Second item, with respect to the Budget Committee presentation, I wanted to mention to the board that the presentation that we gave out, Mr. Gross has posted online. So if school board members were so inclined, we could print them for you to put into your budget packets, but you might want to take a look. The presentation also included sort of an organizational chart of all of our schools and the administrative positions, so you might be curious to take a look at that. And my third one, this is kind of a happy and sad one all at the same time. Last week, we met with the Goffstown High School faculty, and we had a discussion with the teachers and let them know Mr. McBride announced his retirement date, which will be in June 30th of 2026. So that's one more school year with Mr. McBride. And Mr. McDermott talked a little bit about his intentions of hopefully returning to the classroom from the curriculum coordinator position. And I know that that was a lot for the faculty to take in, but I appreciate it, and I can't thank Frank enough for his 30 years. I mean, 30 years is pretty remarkable. So as part of that, we did put up the posting. The posting went live yesterday. We already have a very interested, robust pool of candidates that have already been submitting materials to the portal, so we'll look forward to that. I wanted to let the board know that we have held 3 spots on the committee for people who have expressed interest to Heather.
Yep.
I think that's Lauren, Jack, and Jared.
Yep.
In addition, Julie from New Boston will be joining you as well. So we will be asking families for some participation, as well as the teachers and the support staff. So I don't believe that Mr. McBride has put an announcement out to the school yet, so I'm hoping to. Come on, Frank. We'll get that done.
Is that it?
That's it. Thank you.
Wow. All right, any questions for Brian, comments? All right, moving on, old business is second reads. So there's 3 policies that if you guys are ready to make motions and to adopt. So the first one is JFABD, admission of homeless students. So I'll need a motion for that.
So moved.
So that was Ginny making a motion.
Yep.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Caroline. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Teachers, student, say aye. Opposed? Abstaining? We're unanimous on that one. The next one is JKAA, use of restraint, seclusion, and physical contact. Need a motion to
Motion
adopt.
to approve JKAA.
Thank you, Caroline. Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that Lauren?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Teachers, student? Yes? All right. Opposed? Abstaining? We're unanimous. And the last one is JLDBA, Behavioral Management and Intervention.
Motion to approve JLDBA.
Thank you, Caroline. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Retta. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Teachers, student, yes. Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Did you get that, Denise?
I did.
Perfect.
It's working out really well. Thank you.
Good. Yes, we just want to make sure we get everybody's vote counted. All right, so moving on to new business, replacement of the district firewall.
Mr. Gross.
Scott, you want to talk
Sure,
about that?
you have a memo that IT Director Stephen Bourget and I worked on, and you'll see that we have a firewall that is approaching end of life next school year. And firewalls are important for a variety of reasons, security, et cetera, but it also makes sure that bad content doesn't end up coming across the screens here at all of our schools. So with that, we have a good opportunity using a program called E-Rate. So E-Rate is a governmental program in which Goffstown is eligible to receive half of the cost of hardware that is involved in any type of connectivity, Wi-Fi, et cetera. So we were able to do it on a variety of different projects. This is yet another one. So what Stephen provided in terms of your backup materials is that the hardware cost of this endeavor will probably be somewhere around the $90,000 mark, although that's our estimate. Ultimately, the government goes out to bid on our behalf. So Stephen has to fill out the forms. There's a pretty lengthy process. They go out to bid on our behalf, and then we are allowed to then select the vendor, essentially. So the hardware is eligible for that 50% E-rate. That cost is right around $90,000. I've learned from working with Mr. Talbot that we put a contingency reserve on some of these things. And with that, we anticipate that it could be upwards of $100,000, of which we might need 50. $10,000 or up to $10,000 would be for software, which is not E-rate eligible. And that is something that Stephen and I and Doug will have to work with in terms of budget dollars and reallocations to make that happen. We're doing this proactively. It will go out of service by, I think he said May or June of 2026. So we don't really want to screw around with having a couple of months of no service. So this is a good opportunity for us to do it during the summer months.
I motion to authorize the use of up to $50,000 for the school district's share of hardware using funding from the Capital Reserve Fund after July 1st, 2025.
Thank you, Caroline. Do I have a
Second,
second?
yes.
By Dan? And then Dan, did you have a comment or a
Right.
question?
The one thing that, we have a spare, not a spare, we have what they call a hot spare and an active, in case the active goes down, the spare. The spare is almost the one that's dead. And we got to get rid of that one and take the one that's a year and a half dead and make that the backup. So everything's moving down, so that, we really got to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have a motion. We have a second? Is there any further discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Teacher, student, they all say yes. Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Thank you, Scott.
All right, the last item that we have under new business is the Goffstown Department of Public Works would like to do a culvert repair on Juniper Drive, which is adjacent to property at Mountain View Middle School. And in order to effectuate that repair, they need what's called a temporary license, which allows them to enter onto our property, make those repairs, put the property back to what it looked like before, or as best you can. And in doing so, they need that temporary license to apply for permits through the Department of Environmental Services, essentially. So this is basically DPW's due diligence. They want to schedule this work for the summertime. And in order to do that, they have to line up any type of licenses or easements, temporary easements that they need to do the work. And since this is on our property, they need our permission to do so. So it's not a massive thing by any stretch, but it will help with drainage for people in that community on Juniper.
Go ahead, Dan.
Juniper is on the backside.
Backside.
That you can't actually.
You won't see it.
And if you go along the road, you wouldn't even know a culvert is there.
Yeah.
It's so many
Yep.
bushes. They're gonna just have to clear cut the bushes, so to
Yeah.
speak. We don't expect them to put the bushes back, do we?
No.
Why not?
Yeah,
Put some out there
Make
for
the
the
drainage
wildlife.
better.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so I'll need a motion.
Motion to authorize the superintendent or designee to sign the temporary license for culvert slip lining construction on Mountain View Middle School property.
Thank you, Caroline. Do I have a second? By Ginny. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Teacher, student, all three say yes. Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Gross.
All right, thank you. So now, teacher staffing.
So for your notification, we have a student teacher, a leave of absence, and a long-term substitute, so no action required there. I continue to be pleased when we see student teachers. This is something that I'm constantly looking for, so I love seeing young people who want to go into teaching. I'm glad to see that. For your approval this evening, we have 2 co-curricular nominations for gymnastics volunteers. So thank you to Catherine Lane and Nikki Osborne. Here are 2 more examples of people donating their time to the student athletes at Goffstown High School.
All right, so I'll need a motion for the co-curricular. Go ahead, Jack.
I'll make a motion to approve the co-curricular nominations as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second by Retta? Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Teacher, student, they all say yes. Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. All right. Any other business that may come before the meeting?
I'm wondering, Retta, if you wanted to do the three things?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Brian.
It's all right. I'll keep an eye on you.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, so I have at least 4 things that I noted, so I'm just going to throw them out there.
Yeah.
So I think all of those internships was impressive that
huge,
were being
yeah.
presented out. The financial audit report
Yep.
and all the good work done by the staff at the SAU. And then some of the facts that were presented about being the lowest in the state for schools with elementary, middle, and high schools, and administration, where we stand in the middle of the pack. So facts, we presented some facts here that we really want to make sure people hear. And then Frank McBride's retirement. So I'm going to throw it out to you guys, because we are limited to 3. And just so you know, we did get the 3 things out.
I saw that.
All ADA compliant.
Yes.
It wasn't until
awesome.
Wednesday or
But it's still
Thursday,
good.
so we're getting closer.
Getting there.
And it's getting smoother, so I appreciate all the support.
I vote for 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4.
Yeah, you might be able to put 2 and 3 together, and then just do all of them.
Yeah.
Because it's still money
Yeah.
stuff. If not, 1.
Yeah, it might be
1,
hard
2,
to
and
get
4.
all those facts, but.
Then 1, 2, and 4, I say. What does everybody else say? 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3.
I think the audit is important to highlight,
Yeah.
however, given our current community climate and budget situation, I do think it's important to highlight as much as possible our operating situation, and lowest cost per pupil is really appropriate to highlight that still. I like the information that Scott presented on the administration, since there's so much focus on that right now. So
I'm wondering if we could combine it with the due diligence and we were really praised for our work with the audit,
Yep.
but also all of these things, our fiscal responsibility maybe.
Yeah.
it's a good idea.
Everybody good with that? Go ahead, Lauren.
No,
Yeah.
thank you. If I may, I know that in our committee, we were talking about having a greater Facebook presence. This might just be an example of, we have 3 great things from the meeting that we definitely want to put forward, but this is great supplementary information that we
Right.
could
Yeah.
try to,
Right.
get out to the community, here's our 3 things, a couple days later, here's all this excellent information that,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of
Definitely.
other things for later.
And that will be on our agenda in January to talk about more,
Yay.
to bring something concrete back to the board. But thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Retta. All right, anything else? There is no non-public tonight.
May I make
Yes.
so Heather,
Does this come back to Brian?
Yes, yeah, we can take that. Yes, Dan?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Dan makes a motion to adjourn. Oh, wait. Did
They didn't see it on
Oh,
that side
okay.
of the table. Brian, they didn't get it on that side
Oh.
of the table.
Is that the correspondence or the?
yeah. All right, so Dan
Real
made,
quick.
Dan made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
By
Oh, the rail
Caroline.
trail thing.
All
the rail
those in
trail
favor,
letter.
say aye. I'm not gonna ask who's opposing. All right.
I'm sure Dan
And
didn't
teachers
oppose.
and Brady
He's got his hat
said
on.
yes, Denise. All right, guys, happy holidays. We'll see you